Hello and welcome to another episode of Between the Studs. I'm your host Mark, and today I'm joined by Garrett.
Hey, how are y'all doing?
And we are going to be talking about Bionicle, specifically the OG Bionicles.
Yep.
And their masks, and how intricate and collectible these masks have become. And actually, initially were, I think, right?
I mean, that was one of the big selling points of Bionicle was collectibles, and then that transitioned into other LEGO themes. I know, first one that comes to mind is Atlantis with the keys and everything.
Exactly. Yeah, and I actually didn't realize this looking at Bionicles, knowing of their existence, very much on the peripheral of my LEGO experience.
Yes.
But that was kind of the point of the Bionicle mask. But before we get too far into the physical construct of the masks themselves, can you describe what Bionicle is to someone who has no idea, like me a year ago?
Yes, not a problem. So Bionicle was, pretty much one of the themes that saved LEGO from bankruptcy.
That I do know.
A lot of people don't want to admit it, but there was a time where 100% of profits were Bionicle. The original concept came about in 1995.
Yes.
And it was originally called the Boneheads of Voodoo Island. A little bit different.
Sounds very weird.
A little bit different, but that translated into Bionicle. One of the main points of that one was knocking the heads off the characters.
Gotcha. Or in this case, the masks.
And that translated into the masks here.
Yeah.
But Bionicle stands for a biological chronicle. They are not just robots.
Yeah.
They are partially organic and alive.
Interesting. So they have like a soul or a spirit to them, right?
Yes.
So that's interesting.
And they have, they've got certain organs and stuff like that. They're not complete robots, unlike some other things in the Bionicle universe that are full robots.
Gotcha. In the Bionicle story, there's like you got the island.
Yep.
And that was the beginning of the Bionicle story, but it's way bigger than that once it fully evolved. So.
The second half of the name Chronicle was the big point of Bionicle was that they wanted an intriguing story and they wanted an intriguing
mystery, right?
Yeah, they wanted something that people could get invested into and stay with the series, kind of like how Ninjago's done. But yeah, it all started on an island called Maturin. It was a peaceful island where all of the Maturin lived. Let me actually grab one of the Maturin from over here.
There we go.
Of these. These are the main inhabitants of the Bionicle universe.
These little robotic-looking individuals.
And they lived on the island with elder versions called Turagas. And eventually, there is the big bad guy, Makuta, who is trying to plunge the Maturin universe into darkness.
Sounds pretty bad, right?
It's very much a good versus evil story. And the TOA, the first wave of Bionicle, are the sworn protectors of the Maturin.
Gotcha. So the heroic characters, the good guys, right?
They're the light in the dark.
This sets the stage for these original Bionicle sets. This was the story.
Yes.
And it kind of progressed from there. The Bionicles are trying to... What's their main purpose now that they're on the island?
Now that once they washed up on the island, they were actually... The canisters play a big part of the story.
Interesting.
Is that the original TOA were trained I'm not going to go into spoilers, but a couple thousand years before the island was even formed.
Wow.
And then they were placed into these TOA canisters in case they were ever needed to protect the Maturins. And so eventually, one of the Maturins named Taku, who is kind of like a main character for Bionicle besides Taku.
Yeah.
He collected the 6 TOA stones on the island of Motunui, and that summoned the TOA canisters to the island.
So it unlocked that potential saving grace, the rescue team, right? So
there was a malfunction, and they didn't deploy when they needed to.
Okay.
So the island and the Maturin universe was plunged into darkness for a couple hundred years before they were able to arrive.
Gotcha. So because of the little character Taku, do we actually have him here?
We do have a Taku over here. They didn't make an official set for him, but he's essentially the same as another Maturin, except he uses a different mask. Gotcha. So I went ahead and pieced one together for us.
That's awesome.
We'll go ahead and stick him up here.
And he's the same character that we see on the new Bionicle Anniversary Gift of Purchase.
He is.
He's the little side character.
He's the little guy who rides on Tahu's back.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Now, buying that set a while ago, I didn't understand that reference, so that's cool to know that he is central to the original Bionicle storyline.
He's central to the entirety of the first Bionicle story part. He was the main character in the online game that came out before really even the sets did. He was pretty much the main character in the first movie, The Mask of Light.
Okay.
So Taku is a name in the Bionicle Universe story that Taku is an important character.
Yes.
And ends up doing even more important things.
Yeah. Later on, right?
Yeah,
So,
to start out, he's the reason the TOA even showed up to the island.
Yes. So he called in the cavalry to save
Yes.
everybody, right? So
Pretty
that's
much.
awesome.
Unknowingly.
Unknowingly.
Unknowingly, but
interesting.
good.
Yes.
Good he
And
did.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned that the video game and all this other stuff, the online
Yep.
PC game, came out before the release of Bionicle. So LEGO is carefully laying the foundations of story and interest for their
That
sets
was
before
one of
they
the,
dropped.
yeah. One of the main things for Bionicle was the story. There were novels, there were comic books, there were, there was 2 online Flash games, there were Game Boy games.
Yep.
There was a lot of story that you could only get from other parts of media.
Yeah.
That weren't, that some of the novels only had certain bits of lore. Some of the comics only had certain bits of lore.
So lots of little pieces to complete a whole picture.
And the Maturin, actually, these ones, they're nicknamed the Maturin because these were the McDonald's toys.
Yeah.
These appeared in Happy Meals even before the actual TOAs came out.
Yeah. So I remember seeing those in the McDonald's Happy Meals at the time, and I was like, those are pretty cool. They were fun. They threw a little disc. I'm not even sure which one I got, but I got one of them, and it was a lot of fun.
That's great.
Very cool.
I was too young at the time for the McDonald's toys, but I think just pretty much, I was like 2.
Yeah. Well, you can pick these up later now. They are not necessarily cheap. Some of these are getting a little more collectible.
A little more expensive now,
Yeah.
but they're technically the first wave of Bionicle.
Yeah.
Like they predate the OG Bionicles.
Very interesting, yeah.
So.
And it's cool to see that the careful preparation, the laying the foundations, the McDonald's toys, all that ended up adding to a good story, which really was the driving force behind the massive success of Bionicle. We really can't understate it. For a couple years, Bionicle represented 100% of LEGO's profitability.
I mean,
Literally.
There is a good chance that, Bionicle is the reason LEGO didn't go bankrupt in the early 2000s.
Yeah. It's pretty fantastic. So moving on, so the story is that's the basics of the first
Pretty much
gen.
the basics of the story. The TOA showed up on the island. They didn't remember anything because they had been in the canisters for so long. They had to reassemble themselves, like how you have to assemble them out of the canisters.
Gotcha.
That was part of the story. And then they went to their respective parts of the island. There's different sections of the island, like a snowy place and a mainly water place. Like the water place is Gakoro.
Gotcha.
And that's where Gali just immediately went to as, instinct.
Yeah, kind of the guardians of their specific
Essentially,
biospheres. Yeah.
yes. And so their first main story was to collect 6 different Kanoki masks. Kanoki masks are the masks. They're called Kanokis. And they were forged out of discs of protodermis, which is an unknown liquid at this time in the story.
Yeah, mysterious
It's
substance.
like a metal.
Yeah,
It's an unknown mysterious metal that's been used in the Maturin universe.
Gotcha. Okay.
So they are they're tasked with going to find the 6 different versions of their Kanoki mask.
In their colors, right?
Yes, so Gali has the mask of water breathing, and it is this translucent blue color, but she can also wear the Kanoki Kakama, the mask of speed.
Gotcha.
But she has a version that is blue, for her.
Okay.
And the same goes for every other character. They can all wear the 6 different masks, but they come in their respective colors.
So they could swap out the masks and get different abilities, perhaps.
Yep,
So.
that was once they collected all 6 Kanoki masks, they were awarded special golden masks, and those masks allowed them to access any of the Kanoki powers. Here's a Miru.
Very cool.
And I think I've got I've got a Howl in here.
Nice. They got this kind of copperish gold color to them.
And I've got a Taku.
Very cool. So they're right here, but we'll hopefully have some close-ups for you too. So.
But when they unlocked these masks, they were able to switch between all the different powers on the fly.
Gotcha. That's really interesting. So they had not only their elemental, like their home base, their home turf, as it were, but they also had different masks that could give them different abilities too.
Yeah, they all had direct elemental powers, Tahu being the fire guy and Kopaka being the ice guy.
Exactly.
And they could control those elements to a degree, but then they wore the mask that gave them a secondary power. Tahu's being the mask of shielding.
Yeah.
So he essentially could create a force field.
Very cool.
And so that's how they eventually, when they collected the 6 different Kanoki masks and were able to find their gold masks, they were finally able to take on the big bad guy Makuta.
There you go.
So, and they had to defeat him by using, their masks didn't help. They had to use their elemental powers all at once.
Yeah, so the masks were ineffective against Makuta's evil powers.
Pretty
so,
much.
Yeah,
Against the shadow.
Gotcha. Very cool. And so later on, so this is the initial...
This is an initial 2001 storyline and the sets that came out.
So we're talking like the masks was kind of like you wanted to not only get the TOA that you enjoyed, but also the masks to upgrade them and get them to their full potential.
Essentially.
Yeah. So.
They sold these individual mask packs that came with like, I think it was 3 or 4 different Kanoki masks. And you had a chance of getting the gold ones, or there was a like a metallic silver one that was meant to represent their mask before they were before they fully assembled themselves.
Yeah, so
they were depowered
before
masks.
they had put it on and it turned color. They had
it was powerless.
Yeah, gotcha. Interesting. So I think that's an interesting concept, even among LEGO themes, is that you have to collect all these little different wearable items. I mean, you do have a little bit of that, maybe with like Knight's Kingdom 1, or some Ninjago sets, some like Atlantis sets. But I feel like this is next level because they all have 6.
They all have
a gold
6.
one.
Yep.
Then they can fight the bad guy, and then they can save the island. So it's like there's a lot of collectability to all these different.
There's a lot of collectability to them, and as nice as the gold masks look, they're by no means even close to being some of the rarest masks.
Yeah. So if we're talking about Wave 1, was there any other rare masks released in that year, or is it the following years that they came out?
In Wave 1, I think I've got 2 more of the rare masks in here. I've got, this is a special one. I don't have Lewa, the green Bionicle, on the table right now. Here's his normal Miru. It's a green, a dark green. It's a very nice color. But back in 2001, Legoland California gave out these translucent neon green versions.
Yes. And that's a really cool color, really cool
Very cool
shape.
color.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so that was given out. It's not crazy rare, but I mean, it was only out in Legoland California and maybe one other, I think.
Yeah.
But back in 2001, the Kanoki Hao, which is Tahu's mask, but this one is an infected Hao. It is black, but it is hand-painted by the LEGO group, which is very interesting.
During production, somebody actually physically painted each mask.
Every mask
going down the assembly line.
Every mask is slightly different of these because of the hand-painted nature of them.
That is pretty cool.
But this is most supposed to represent Makuta when the TOA first fought him, because he took the appearance of a Maturin, an infected Maturin.
Yes. So a terrifying concept, but also a really cool production anomaly for LEGO.
I can't think of any other pieces that are hand painted off the top of my hand.
Yeah, maybe like the very oldest, like the tree or plant pieces, or like the 50s and 60s LEGO. But this is like definitely.
This is 2001, and they were hand painted. It's very interesting.
I have no idea how that would even have worked. They must have because this isn't a normal set, right?
No, it was in, well, actually, yes.
Okay.
It came in essentially they called it kind of like a power pack, where it came with a Maturin that you could switch that mask onto to represent that corrupted Maturin.
Yep.
And I think it also came with the, like a Bionicle soundtrack of some of the online games and things.
Okay. So it wasn't like impossible to find, but it was pretty hard to find, maybe not common.
It wasn't a normal thing that you would,
So that's just mind-boggling. It's very cool to see that unique painted effect on that mask.
It's a very different one. And now I think one of my favorites. This is probably the last mask I have from Wave 1. That's
we want to talk about
yeah, that's really notable, and that is the full chrome silver Hao.
Yes.
This one was also a power pack thing. That came, I think this one was also the same thing with the music and stuff like that.
Yep, hard to find.
But this was meant to represent a completely different mask. It's the name is blanking on me, but it's meant to represent a different mask. They just didn't want to make a new mold.
So they just did the
They just did the normal Hao and chromed it. But it's an important mask. It's got like more power. It doesn't have the Hao power, the mask of shielding.
Okay.
It's a bit different. But those are hard to find without that chrome flaked off.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, the thing about it is LEGO chromed pieces are rare. They didn't make a ton of them. They were only like the specialty piece out of one set. So to see a cool, this is probably one of the larger chrome pieces they've made.
I was about to say.
And it's really fascinating.
And for that one's in really good shape when one of the main play functions of Bionicle is to knock the mask off of them, to hit the mask and knock it off.
Yes. So it's now that you mention it, Garrett, on Wave 1, all the TOA have that cool little arm motion, which makes a great play feature.
And that was one of those things that, I mean, that really solidified my love for Bionicle as a kid, was building an action figure, which what kid doesn't want an action figure? But then you can make him fight.
Exactly. They have a little duel or battle.
You don't have to sit there and pose him to make him fight. You can just make him swing his arm and fight.
You can actually smack the other TOA in the face if he wants to.
Exactly. So, and all of them had normally just the one gear on one arm. They did change that later on. But Gally was one of my favorites because she was the only one, besides I think a Nuva maybe, to include both arm rotation in the front, or in the 2001 line.
Yeah, the double clawing action is pretty cool.
So, I mean, they had great play features. It had a great story. Like, if you were 8, 9, 10, right around this time, oh, man.
Yeah, you would have fallen for it. Hook, line, and sinker.
And then,
great.
you know, it would continue on for another 10 years. That's what LEGO wanted, was this line that people could grow up with and stay involved in the story.
Yeah, very cool. And I think it definitely succeeded given how many different waves of Bionicle they came out with.
Yeah.
And obviously, every great masterpiece has its, not so great sequel.
That is true.
We won't get into that today. We're really just focusing on the first couple waves, which really helped solidify Bionicle as a corner piece of LEGO.
That first storyline is what really solidified it, and then they started to go back and give more context to the story. So, like in the beginning, it's a mystery on a lot of the stuff. Nothing really makes sense on where these things are coming from.
Very mysterious,
where this world is. But the longer you go into the story, it's got some very deep lore.
Gotcha. So, all right. Well, we want to move on to Wave 2 then, or at least to the Bullrocks.
Yeah, we can go. I'm sorry, I don't have any of the Rakshi with us, or the Rahi. My bad.
Rahi,
yeah, those are like the kind of wild animals of the island.
The giant beasts and
creatures. There was like a tiger one. There was one that was kind of like a mosquito and some spiders and stuff. But those were infected wildlife that were infected by Makuta to try to destroy the Maturin and all that. Gotcha. But then, after the TOA first defeated Makuta the first time, he found a way to awaken the Bullrock swarms. And that became the TOA's next problem.
Yes.
Was right after they defeated Makuta and returned to the surface of the island, they found a Maturin who had been traumatized and could only say one word, Bullrock. And so eventually they went back to their respective villages and discovered the Bullrock swarms that had infected the island. So these guys were complete robots. They had no organic material to them. They were complete shells and
just machines.
Just machines. And their whole goal was just to destroy the island.
Yeah.
Was to clear all of the wildlife, all the plant life off of the island.
So destroy everything. They were a swarm, like locusts. Yeah. So.
And the weird thing about them is they didn't attack unless they were attacked. They were very much driven just by the focus of destroy the island.
Yeah.
So, but these guys were always one of my favorite as a kid. They have a great play feature with this lever on the back that you can snap their head forward.
They have the little...
it's great.
Almost looks like a pecking motion, right?
Almost. And it was meant to knock the masks off of the TOAs.
Yep. Then that way they're relatively powerless.
Relatively powerless. Yeah. And so these guys were super cool, and they all came with, not Kanoki Mask, we're done with that collectathon, and we've moved on to the next collectathon with rubber masks.
Yes.
These are called Kranas.
Gotcha.
And they are meant to be kind of the brains of the Bullrock. This is what would control the Bullrock, and so it would be slotted in the top of their head like that. And the only way to destroy the Bullrocks was to destroy the Krana and get rid of that. But the Krana was also used to control other Maturins and TOA. The Bullrock could launch the Krana out of their head, and it would then infect a TOA. And now this TOA is corrupted into the part of filling this Bullrock's role of destroying the island. So if you thought there was a lot of masks with these to collect 6 different versions, 6 different colors of the 6 different masks plus special variations, the Krana come in 8 different molds and in, I want to say it's 12 different colors, maybe more.
Yeah.
It's a lot. There's close to like 140 Krana, I think.
That's pretty crazy.
It's a lot.
So each one, they also would have come, most of them would have come in the sets, but also some were special too.
They had, each Bullrock came with a Krana. Then there were also just Kanoki / Krana packs. They came with like 3 Krana, 2 Kanoki masks.
Gotcha.
Then there was also, I don't have one of them with us, but there were smaller Bullrocks that didn't really look like this. They were like a couple pieces, but they were called the Bullrock Va.
Yeah, the little sidekicks, right?
Yeah, and they came with different colored Krana that was meant to be a deactivated state of the Krana, a different color. And they could slot that into a Bullrock that had its Krana ripped out and reactivate it.
Yes.
So I'm sure that was very unfortunate for the TOA
so
the first time I saw that.
They're bringing up recharged batteries for the Bullrock to go take out some more.
No, Taku. Essentially. But yeah, these were, one of my favorite sets as a kid. Not only just because they were really affordable.
Yeah.
But you could curl them up in these little balls like this. And that was part of the way they kind of moved around the island.
They'd roll around
Yeah, they were very insect-like almost. But you could just roll them up like this, and then you could display them in their canisters hanging upside down.
Yeah.
I always thought that was really cool.
That's pretty cool. So not only do you have a really fun kind of play feature there, but you can also roll it in a ball and roll it around on the table.
Yeah.
So
all around, they were a really good villain, or good villain set. And
great design.
Yeah. This was kind of meant to be one of the first army builder things.
Yeah.
They're a swarm. So if you wanted to have 4 of each, that makes sense.
You could have a handful of them, no problem story-wise. Yeah,
of course.
The TOA, you couldn't have several, of each TOA marching around. That doesn't make sense. It's a hero. These guys are the army builders. That's good. So.
And so the TOA went to their, the goal to defeat the Bullrock. Considering it was a massive swarm that had this one mission, they had to go and find what was controlling the Bullrock.
Yes.
Besides the Krana, there was a driving force behind the Bullrock. And eventually it was Taku and Kopaka who descended into the depths of the island and found out that the Bullrock were coming from the island itself on the inside of it.
Gotcha.
And so they then found out that there were 2 that were controlling the Bullrock. I brought the box with us. Oh no, this is
that's pretty cool.
That's great. But these were the Bullrock Queens, Kanak and Gadok, and they controlled the Bullrock swarms. So once they had to collect 48 of the Krana in the different colors.
Yeah.
Like they had to collect their masks. They had to collect 48 Krana so that, hey, incentive, go buy all 48 Krana.
Collect all the Kranas, yeah.
Yep. So then they were able to take those to an altar on Matanui. I got Metronui on the brain. It's good. And they then descended down into the island to the Bullrock Queens.
Their lair.
So they down there they found, I wish I had one of those with us, but they found called TOA Exo Armors. It's essentially a mech suit for Bionicle characters.
Interesting.
Super cool, super hard to find.
So that was actually something you could acquire.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
It was a whole separate set that you could slide one of these in, and it made it bulkier, and they were pretty cool. So they tried using those against the Bullrock Queens. It didn't work. They couldn't use their elemental powers in them. So eventually they ditched those and then used all their elemental powers and were able to encase the Bullrock Queens in a solid cage of protodermis.
Gotcha. So they caged them up, basically.
Yes, they caged them up and essentially put them to sleep for a while. Put them into a hibernation.
So that's how they defeated the Bullrock.
Yes.
And saved the island once again. So.
Once again. And then that is when our TOA really start to go through some changes. Because after they defeat the Bullrock Queens, holes in the floor opened up in the Bullrock Queen room. And all of the TOA descended down into those that were full of liquid protodermis, which is a mutagenic fluid.
Yeah.
And so
a magical metal fluid thing, yes.
And so it then transformed the TOA into the TOA Nuva, which were upgraded versions of the TOA. They had completely unique Kanoki masks that nobody else could use. They were only for the TOA Nuva.
Gotcha. So very specific masks.
Very specific masks. They're different molds. I've got a couple of them with us right now.
There we go.
There's Onua. I didn't have Onua regular, but we've got his Nuva version.
So he's got the saw blades, and he's got that the new to see silver armor for him too.
Yes,
so.
they made him a lot bulkier. Made him a lot bulkier, a little smoother. New, leg pieces and things, and then all of them ended up with the double weapons. But yeah, I mean, the TOA Nuva were considered to be like the most powerful TOA that have ever existed.
Yeah,
it was all set in place on the island for them. So. The TOA Nuva, there's a couple different variations on their masks. The same kind of color differences. Like, there's the How Nuva, or How Nuva. Looks nothing like the normal How.
Yeah, very different.
Very different, but they were meant to be, they're bigger, they're a little thicker. Meant to invoke more power.
Yeah, they look like the beefier, on steroids version of the original masks,
yeah,
right?
Pretty much. So, but then that awakened when the Bullrock Queens were put to sleep, encased. That awakened 6 special Bullrock called the Bullrock Call.
Yeah.
They were essentially the same things as these. The reason they exist is because the Bullrock sold really well.
Yeah, and they wanted some upgraded versions, right?
Yep. We got upgraded TOAs, and those sold great. So they said, man, we could really make upgraded Bullrock. And they didn't sell great.
Oh, they didn't sell great.
They did not sell too great. Because everybody already had Bullrocks.
Yeah.
They didn't need Bullrock coal with silver on them.
And were the Bullrock coal, were they an army builder too, or were they an individual character?
Now, they were individual characters. There was only 6 of them.
Gotcha.
And they were specially selected and modified Bullrocks that were meant to reawaken the Bullrock Queens.
Yes.
So they had completely different elemental powers. Like there was one that had gravity power. There was one that had the power of sonics.
Yeah.
There was one that was the power of disintegration, I think.
Okay.
So they were completely different from the normal elemental powers. But they also, the coolest thing about the Bullrock Coal was the fact that some of them came with special masks, special Chronas.
There you go. So that's makes them extremely collectible, right?
Extremely collectible. Some of the most expensive LEGO pieces really come from some of these early lines. But we actually have one over here.
Yes, let's talk about it.
This is a Chrono Call, and this is cast in white metal.
Yes.
So this was one of 5,000. It was randomly included in Bullrock Call sets. You could have been a little kid and just bought one off the counter, and you might have gotten this.
Yes, it has a cool little card.
Yep.
Congratulations, you found one of 5,000 white metal Chrono Call. Keep searching for the sterling silver Chrono Call. So even if you found this, there's more.
Even if you found that, there's more. And there was only 72 of the sterling silver one.
Wow.
I think there was 100 made, but there were 72 sold, and the rest of them you're given to LEGO employees.
Yeah, so that they're kind of like gone.
Yeah. But so these are what made the Chrono or the Bullrock Coal really cool. Was these? I mean, because how often does LEGO make metal parts?
Very inoften. You'll find it every now and then, but this is also like a limited edition metal piece. How crazy is that?
A limited edition metal piece. So there was the white metal Chronos, there was the sterling silver Chronos, there was a vacuum metal Chrono, which is like more of a flat metal, I think.
Interesting. Okay.
And then there were gray plastic prototype Chrono that were made out of I think it was essentially this kind of color, but made out of a hard plastic instead of this rubberized.
Because these rubberized ones work pretty good, not only inside the masks, but also when you're attaching them, that flexibility makes it a little easier. So.
It gives it a good friction fit.
Yeah, exactly.
Very interesting. Chronicle were interesting, but they really mainly only gave us really rare pieces.
Yeah. So it was another collectible thing. And it's like we went from the already difficult original TOA to the Chrono, and then the Chrono Call added a whole other level. So it's like the collectability and the rarity of some of these pieces is getting a little bit crazy, and it's fun.
It's fun,
but it's like a lot of like regular LEGO fans will never be able to get all these unless they really.
When you think about it, I mean, think about being a kid and trying to collect all these different. There's no way.
There's no Bricklink back then.
No.
It wasn't very common, and so it's like just trying to find all this stuff must have been crazy.
Yeah, and I mean buying mask packs after mask packs, and it's like, oh, I have 5 red howls. I need a green one.
Exactly. I just need one green one, or whatever. So,
yeah, so I mean,
amazing.
The fact that we have a really good selection of masks that I've been able to find in the basement.
Yep.
But I mean, there's still some that like I'm looking for them. So
Yep. We'll keep our eyes open. We do get new stuff traded in all the time.
This is, I mean, the Metal Kron is one of the. I never thought I'd see one of these in person.
Yeah.
So and
that's cool.
We just had this laying in the basement.
Glad we got to see it and document it. Yeah, that's
right.
Awesome. Very cool. So that was the first and second wave of the TOA. Was there a third wave technically, or was this kind of like the main storyline for a while?
Pretty much from like 2001 to like 2003, it's pretty much considered like the first arc of the story.
Gotcha.
On how we go from how the TOA got to the island and their first enemies, and then we go to their upgraded versions.
Upgraded enemies, yeah.
Yes. And then after that, it leads into the Mask of Light movie, the first Bionicle movie, which, I mean, it's not the first LEGO movie, but one of the very early LEGO movies ended up being a Bionicle movie.
Yep.
Which is very interesting. But they ended up making a good amount of sets for promotion with for the Mask of Light movie.
Yep.
So I've got a couple of them over here. We're going to start with the enemies of
yes.
Yes. We're going to start with the enemies from the Mask of Light movie. These are called the Rakshi. And these guys are super cool.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my favorites.
Awesome.
Yeah. They're so much taller than the TOA, like just already. But these were servants of Makuta.
Gotcha.
And these are also fully robotic enemies.
Yes.
The TOA didn't have a problem with destroying robots, but anything that had some organics.
They didn't want to start killing people, not just robots.
Yes. Yeah. But so we go from one collectible to another that these are robots that are controlled by a little worm called Krata.
Krata.
Yes.
Also very similar to Krana. But
yes.
Yeah.
So, if you thought there was a lot of Kranas, there are, I don't even know how many of these little worms.
Hundreds at least, right?
At least there's tons of different variations from the dual colors.
Yeah. So they had 2 different colors of rubber molded into one piece.
Yes.
And then you had, I think, what was it, 5 or 6 different versions of the physical shape of the piece?
The heads on them, it's hard to see on the heads on them can be different. There's stages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Gotcha.
So, and they were all these dual colored, different, there's a Spider-Man one.
There you go, the red and blue.
Yep, so there were all these different dual colored ones. And some of the Rakshi came with special promotional sets that included the only solid color one, the purple Kratas, which is the Shadow Krata. These are Krata that have reached stage 6, the highest form of evolution for them, and then gone past that.
Oh my.
So these ones essentially have their own free will and are fully in control of their powers and stuff.
Yeah. So a souped up evil
worm
that can control a robot and is going after the TOA, right? So,
yeah. It's very strange when you look at the sets in the worm. They looked a lot more menacing in the movies. Their whole face like opened up into like a scary teeth. It looked like a Demogorgon mouth almost.
Gotcha. That is cool.
Yeah, these guys were the main bad guys of the
final third wave.
Yeah, the Mask of Light movie. And speaking of, we got the green one here, Levoc, I think. But he actually ended up poisoning Taku Nuva in the movie.
Gotcha.
And so that brings me to another specialty mask that was produced for the movie. There was 4 different versions of it, but this is the Kanoki Nuva, but it is marbled with green and red.
Yes.
And it's meant to represent a poisoned version of the mask.
That looks super cool.
It's one of my favorite masks, but there's like 3 different versions of this one that show the different levels of poisoning.
Wow, so not only could you get this cool mask, but it's also technically different versions of it. So.
Technically, there's different stages of the poisoning. So it's like lightly poisoned, and then like midway, and then like
heavily poisoned,
fully controlled.
Yeah, oh no.
So I mean, collectability.
Yeah, I don't know anyone who has all 3 versions of the poisoned How Nuva mask.
Yep.
That's pretty funny.
Not yet. So
Not yet. Hey,
not
hey,
yet.
You're working on it, Garrett. There you go.
But yeah, I mean, if you meet somebody who collects the Krana, that's understandable. They're pretty cool. They've got cool metallic colors that are never seen again. Like this metallic, like sand blue, is a weird color.
Yeah.
But if you ever meet somebody who tries to collect the worms, they're crazy. don't be friends with them.
I actually know 1 or 2 people on Facebook that do that. So, and I think they're pretty close to having all of them. It's pretty crazy. So
I'll give them, that's dedication.
Exactly.
I could not.
I think just having a handful of these is pretty fun though. They are. It's like these evil caterpillars trying to get you. That's probably a phobia for many people.
This is one of those few rare Lego pieces that does not have a Lego stamp anywhere on it.
Wow.
And does not have a part number. It doesn't have anything.
Yeah, just you got to figure it out.
Yeah. So, I remember talking to the guys in the basement who do our sorting, and they told me just how many hundreds of these they've thrown away. Because they didn't think it was Lego, and nobody else thought it was Lego.
Oh my goodness!
And it's one of those that
I
can accept that they didn't know.
Yeah.
But oh man,
that's pretty tragic. Oh,
that purple worm's like $10. Just for that.
Well, now they know. Hopefully they can learn from their mistakes. So. Yeah.
But so going back to the Mask of Light movie, we're going to bring back Takua.
Oh, he's back. Okay.
Because Takua, not only was he an important role in setting up the TOA story. He is like the main character of the Mask of Light movie.
Okay.
Him and his friend Jaller, who is essentially the same as this. This is Jaller, actually. I just put Takua's mask on him.
Yeah.
But he wears a yellow mask. And so they end up finding a very special, rare, legendary mask on the island that is the... Let's find it in here. Yep, here it is. They were able to find the Kanoki Evoki. The Mask of Light.
Very cool.
So this is it's a really nice looking mask. I like the flat dark gold. But this is an important mask in the story because this mask tells the coming of a seventh TOA.
Gotcha. So 1 more addition to the hero lineup,
1 more addition to the lineup that will be able to face Makuta. Because the TOA faced Makuta, but they didn't technically beat him.
They've stopped him a few times.
They've stopped him. He wanted to test the TOA's power, and then he retreated deeper into the island.
Yes.
So I think the big quote from Makuta, you cannot defeat me for I am nothing. He's a robot and more of a spirit of shadow than anything.
It's almost like a virus that
you
really can't stop.
Pretty much. Yeah. So the main thing that beats shadow is light.
Light.
So Jaller and Takua then go on this quest throughout the land of Matanui. And they run into all the different TOAs that help them along their mission to try to find the 7th TOA who will don the Mask of Light. And so throughout the whole movie, they, it goes through Bionicle lore a little bit. It's a good movie if you've never seen it. I recommend it.
I'll have to check it out sometime.
But it comes to fruition that Takua is the 7th TOA. His friend Jaller gets unceremoniously stabbed by this one right here. I think it actually is. And that then in turn shows Takua that he has to fulfill his destiny and dons the Mask of Light. And then he transforms and becomes the 7th TOA Nuva, Takanova.
Very cool.
So...
with the very fancy white outfit and like a bronze-colored armor. So.
Yep, and then I think he's the only one who has the it's hard to get his mask off. The his face matches the color of all of his other parts.
Yeah, even like his joints and other pieces that would typically be black or gray, they're all white, so it's very cool.
They went completely for he is the TOA of light.
That's super cool.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites. I mean, especially from the movie and stuff. But he actually has a couple different versions of his mask too that are pretty cool. So there's the gold version, which is a really nice one. It's the mask the way it always looks normally is the gold. Here's a more of a silver version. It's a light pearl silver that's used for other parts, not so much his mask, but used for other things.
Yeah.
But then the really nice mask the really nice Mask of Light is the transparent glittered version.
Yes.
That came with this set when it was released. And it's meant to represent kind of the mask power being activated.
That glowing light.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I mean, this is another one of these. I've never seen another Lego piece that uses this kind of plastic or like, I've never seen one that looks that same color.
Yeah, it is a super cool piece, but it's
Yeah.
also super special with that metallic glint inside of a transparent piece.
Yeah, like it's suspended and it's very nice.
Yeah,
So
that is really cool.
It's a really cool mask. It came with that set when it was first released. Takanova is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be in the Lego Movie 2, and they didn't put him in there.
You've told me about that.
Yes.
That's crazy how he was like almost included in that movie.
He
That
was
would have been
supposed to
so
be part
fun.
of like the gang,
Yeah, that would have been cool.
but
yeah.
it is what it is.
We can at least appreciate the special pieces that have made it to us
Yes,
throughout the years, because this color plastic hasn't really been
No.
reintroduced. Even to nowadays, they have the satin colors, which are beautiful.
But they're not quite that.
Not quite this, yes.
Like,
that's awesome.
And it's an interesting piece because from the back, it's like transparent. But when you look at it from the front, it almost has like a yellow gold sheen to it from that glitter. So like it doesn't look fully transparent from the front. It's a very, very nice mask.
Super cool.
One of my favorites.
And during this time they were releasing this
Yes.
Takanova set, did they have a Makuta version to
I'm
fight?
glad you asked because
I remember
they
seeing
did have
that.
a Makuta.
Yeah. Let's bring him out and see if we can check
So
him out.
I grabbed him from the case today, and here is our big bad we've been talking about this whole time, Makuta Pterodax.
And he's got a movement as well. He can just body you in one hit.
They all have great movement.
That's awesome.
But so this is where the silver version of his mask comes in.
Would've been his hands.
Makuta thinks he's just so big and bad and so cool that he wears Takanova's mask as hands on the set, which is so funny to me. He's literally just wearing two faces that form his hands.
That's pretty cool.
But he wears the Kanoki crack-on. I want to say it's called. I might be mispronouncing. But that's
sounds about
the Mask of Shadows. So that came in this black color. There's a bunch of different versions of this just based on the holes on the top.
Gotcha. Okay.
There's like a 4-hold version, a 6-hold version, which that one is the original, and then there's a misprinted 5-hold version.
Oh, wow.
Which is very weird.
So more collectability to the mask, of course. Yeah, yeah.
And then I had a very weird mask because it's not from any of the sets. It's from the play sets.
Gotcha.
This
the little
is-
minifigure size
yes,
ones, yeah.
This is the gold, a flat dark gold crack-on, not the pearl gold. But this is it's a 4-hold version, but this came out in the Tower of Toa set. And it was meant to
okay.
be one of the Viscerax spider's faces. But it is the Mask of Shadows, but it does play story significance because later on there's an alternate reality where Makuta is not a bad guy, and he wears a gold crack-on.
Okay, so that's
So it does work out.
so you can
Yes.
have that like kind of that Marvel
Yep.
multiverse theory where
Yeah.
Makuta is actually not a bad guy and he has a golden mask, and then that way you could use that.
There's a whole
piece.
storyline where Takanova is traveling through different dimensions and portals.
Wow,
So-
that's interesting. so they have this kind of
Yes.
unusual use for a piece, but it actually has a totally practical
Yeah.
use in the story for you to kind of recreate some of these
Yep.
scenes.
And it came out in those godforsaken play sets. But it's a very cool, I like the flat dark gold color. It's very different from the pearl gold color we have now.
Yeah.
And what makes this one interesting is that there is a pearl gold version of this.
Yeah.
It was right in between, the Tower of Toa set came out like right when LEGO was changing their flat dark gold to pearl gold. And so there's a very limited amount of these in pearl gold,
Yes.
and they're like $800. They're crazy.
So it's kind of like how in the Star Wars set example, they
Yes.
had the Imperial Star Destroyer, and for a few months even, they made it in light bluish gray
Yeah.
versus light gray, and those are more valuable. Not crazy much, but this is a completely different story. They're like super valuable.
This is only maybe a $30 or so mask, this color, but I mean, you get into pearl gold, and it's, I think there's one on Bricklink now for $900.
Yeesh.
So
That's amazing. Very cool. But so with the Mask of Light
Yep.
arc, did that kind of wrap up the original Toa line?
yes,
Okay.
after the Mask of Light movie, it shows, Takanova is now the 7th Toa. He's not the leader of the Toa now, but
He's one of them.
He's one of them, you know.
Gotcha.
And so then after this, we go into the Metronui arcs.
Okay.
Which, that's where I was getting Metronui on the brain from. But that actually ends up taking place before any of this happened.
Wow. So it's like you go back in time to that, so to the city scene.
Yes.
Yeah. Because this is all island, sort of semi-tropical,
Yes.
Islander inspired. So,
More very tribal kind of.
Yes.
And then we go into, you know, Metronui, where it is learned that these weren't the first TOAs by any means.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
So it goes into this. The TOA Mata are not done. They go on for, I think their story continues for at least till the end of the
Original
lore,
story.
pretty much. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But then we're introduced to characters that came before that allowed what we just talked about to happen.
So kind of like a prequel, as it were.
Essentially, yeah.
But with those sets, did they actually kind of move away from the original mask?
So they did. After it was actually Takanova was the first first Bionicle mask they introduced that had an axle hole on the back, or an axle pin, I should say.
Instead of the just normal, kind of almost a stud.
The
pin.
other ones, it's not even like a stud piece. Like it's not the same size as a stud, which is weird.
Interesting.
But yeah, so they decided that knocking the mask off of the characters was not fun anymore for whatever reason.
They dialed back on that for some reason?
Yeah, I think people complained about, you know, stuff getting damaged and stuff falling off during play.
Yeah.
And so they said, okay, you know, this from now on, we're using axles on the back. The masks are not popping off.
Yeah, they just stay on.
They just stay on, and we also get away from a lot of the recoloring. The first wave is really the only time that every TOA has a mask in 6 different colors.
Yeah. So they kind of wanted it much more streamlined, probably less production.
Less production. You know, people felt like it was more accessible.
Yep.
Because it's not integral to the story to have all these different colored masks.
You just buy one Bionicle character and that's it. You don't need to get all the colored masks.
Yeah, you go and get TOA Vakama. He doesn't have, you know, a blue mask. He just has his normal mask.
Yeah, exactly.
So it changes a little bit in 2004, 2005 is the next storyline. But it's still considered, I think that's one of the, 2004 is one of the best stories.
Gotcha. So it's still a good story.
Very much. The TOA Metro are really nice.
I feel like we're missing some of that crazy collectability though. You know what I'm saying?
They're missing some of that initial spark of Bionicle, of this frantic frenzy to try to collect all the different ones to defeat the big bad. They needed their golden Kanoki mask to even stand a chance against Makuta.
Gotcha. Yeah, so the heroism, I also I love the Maturins, the tribal nature, the island seems really, it has a very unique and mysterious property to it.
It's a very interesting, I mean, when you really get into the lore, if you like comic books and you like these kind of like, you know, it's very much a fantasy like story and stuff, but I mean, there's a lot of, you know, it's light versus dark. It's good versus evil. But there's a lot of, each character was developed very well. I mean, you know, I brought Maturo up here in the beginning. Maturo starts out as just a normal little Maturin on the island. He's the translator between his Turaga, his elder of his village, and everybody else. And he eventually goes from a Maturin to a upgraded Maturin, which they get like bigger arms and a little bulkier. And then eventually he becomes a TOA himself.
Yes.
And eventually ends up becoming one of the most important characters in the Bionicle universe.
Yes.
So, I mean, this character from McDonald's Polybag ends up back in 2007 being one of the most,
right?
Yeah, the savior of the Bionicle universe, essentially.
That's amazing.
And so even these guys, they started in 2001, and they have stories all the way until the end.
Yeah. That is super cool. It's really fun to see a well-crafted story kind of make its way through all these set productions, through all these different years, and survive all the way till the end when they finally pulled the plug on Bionicle. But I think that most LEGO fans should be able to look back and appreciate the cool effort and care and design that went into these. The play features are amazing.
The play features are some of the best LEGOs ever made.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, even if you don't like Technic, I mean, I get it, but this is something completely unique.
Yeah.
This isn't quite Technic.
Yeah. It was designed for kids, but there's a lot more to appreciate there, too.
There's a lot more to appreciate. I mean, the mocking you can do with Bionicle pieces is really fun with all these gearing functions and stuff. So that part's kind of technic.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's one of those things that if you're a LEGO fan, it's something you should respect.
Yeah, put some respect on it, guys.
Put some respect on this name.
Exactly.
But I mean, a lot of play features and a lot of stuff came from Bionicle. And without it, we may not have LEGO as we know it today.
Yeah, even if you like put all that aside, without Bionicle, you wouldn't be enjoying that new Rivendell set you're building.
That is true.
Whatever else you're into now, those modulars never would have happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much, Garrett, for breaking out all these Bionicles and telling me. I learned a lot, and I felt like I knew the basics of Bionicle before, but even just this brief conversation, I feel like I've been exposed to a lot of great stories.
Yep, and I mean, it was a bit of a glossing over, not to get into crazy deep in the lore, but if you want a good story that you can follow for a little bit, I would highly recommend looking at all of what Bionicle has to offer and going through the story. And before we do end off, I have
something new that you've gotten recently, right?
So if you're ever interested in more Bionicle story, I would highly recommend the Bionicle comic book line. It's a very nice artwork. The story is, I mean, it's Bionicle story, so it's very well written. It's got good lore. And something I didn't realize when I read these as a kid. I don't have any of them anymore. This is one I had to get secondhand. I forgot they were published by DC Comics.
So if you want some actual legit comic books,
it is an actual comic. It's not like it's published by DC.
Yeah.
So like
that's
these
a cool
are good.
fun fact. So.
And the art in them's really nice. I mean, if you want more of the story, I'd recommend this. I'd also recommend any of the novels.
Now, so Garrett, do you know a couple of resources for people who are looking to play maybe the Flash games or read the comics? Do you have any websites you recommend?
Bionicle fandom is like kind of the Bionicle wiki page. That has a lot of the story. And it's got a lot of just information about individual characters that happen throughout the story and stuff. And then Bionicle Media Project is a website that I can't believe the amount of effort that's gone into it. They have every Bionicle comic book saved that's ever been published. They have every novel that was written saved on there. They have the first Bionicle Madanui Flash game. They have the second one that has been saved. And those came out, like, those were an introduction of the story before these even came out. They give a lot of the good story. They give a lot of the TOA's first encounter with Makuta. That's not stated anywhere but the games.
Yeah, that's the only place you can really learn about that. Yeah.
So, I mean, Bionicle Media Project is it's an insane website. I was looking through it the other day, and they have a section where they've essentially recreated the 2001 website page.
The original Bionicle.com.
Yes, they've essentially recreated that, and you can click through it, and it's a nostalgia trip.
That's awesome. Well, very cool, Garrett. Thank you so much again. This is awesome. We'll have to maybe cover some more either different themes or sections of Bionicle. There's so much more to talk about.
We're scratching the surface.
Yeah, exactly. And the more Bionicle we get in, the more you fix up and put up for sale, the more excited me and Joe and other people in the store become. So hopefully this video taught you something about Bionicle. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of stuff.
Oh, before we sign out, one of the nice things about Bionicle and this video is that everything you see is available at Atlanta Brick Co.
ATLbrick.com.
Yes.
Absolutely. So if you want to get started on some of these cool, I think a great starting point is the Bullrock.
I think a Bullrock's a great place to start. It's
pretty affordable. Yeah. Pretty cool. So, but yeah. Thanks, Garrett.
Yeah, of course.
Take care, guys.